Hey friends, tonight we begin with a place so cold it makes your freezer feel like summer in Florida. A place where your eyelashes freeze before your breath finishes leaving your mouth. Welcome to Oymyakon, the coldest inhabited place on Earth, tucked deep into Siberia's frosted spine. Now, before we dig into the frostbite facts, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy our midnight adventures. Also, drop in the comments where you're watching from and what the temperature is right now. Because here in Oymyakon, -60 is just a Tuesday. This is not a bring a jacket kind of cold. This is a your tears freeze on impact kind of cold. And yet, people live here not just survive, but actually smile and wave at the weather like it's a nosy neighbor. Imagine starting your car 2 hours before you need it, just to warm the oil, enough so it thinks about moving. Or going to school because unless it's below -52 kids are still expected to show up. Yeah, recess is mostly theoretical here. And you can forget about plumbing because pipes laugh at warmth and instantly turn to icicles. The cold here is so personal, it feels like the wind is judging your life choices. But for the people of Oymyakon, this isn't punishment. It's just home with a little extra frost on the welcome mat. Let's talk clothing, because this isn't your average layer up and hope for the best situation. You don't just throw on a hoodie and call it a day unless that day ends with frostbite souvenirs. Locals wear reindeer fur boots so thick they make moon boots look minimal. Parkas are so heavy they might qualify as weighted blankets with zippers. And hats aren't optional, unless your idea of a hairstyle includes frozen scalp. Even the dogs here wear coats. Because dignity means nothing when your paws stick to the ground. This kind of fashion isn't about looking cool. It's about staying unfrozen long enough to return home. You don't wear clothes in Oymyakon. You armor up scarves, wrap like battle gear. Gloves are more like survival tools, and socks are layered like geological sediment. And don't get me started on face masks, because exposed skin is an open invitation for the cold to slap you. Even breathing hurts when the air slices into your lungs like cold daggers wrapped in snowflakes. People walk with caution, not because of ice, but because falling means laying in snow that wants to claim your soul. This isn't winter wonderland. This is winter warfare. And yet somehow, the residents manage to look calm, like they're just out picking up milk, which they probably froze into a block on the way home anyway. Now, food in a place like this is more about survival than style, but that doesn't mean it lacks flavor. Frozen fish is a staple. And no, that's not a joke. It's sushi that crunches when you chew it. Horse meat is common. And before you judge, remember the cows gave up and left. Long ago, soup is served at temperatures that could melt your spoon if it weren't already cold. And tea is basically a personality trait, here served hotter than your latest bad decisions. Locals drink broth like it's a warm hug from grandma with extra salt and no judgment. Root vegetables are cherished like treasure because the ground has trust issues about growing anything. Even grocery stores double as climate-controlled safe zones because open-air markets are just ice sculpture displays. Fermented milk is a delicacy. And yes, it tastes exactly as weird as it sounds. You haven't lived until you've tried frozen raw fish called stroganina that could double as building material. And no, nothing ever spoils here because bacteria took one breath and froze. Leftovers stay fresh until next spring or possibly next century, depending on how cold it gets. Cooking isn't about heat. It's about timing because the window before freezing closes in. Minutes, meals are quick. Simple and deeply nourishing because food here is fuel. Not a 5-course culinary adventure, but a fight against turning into a popsicle. Let's talk homes because you can't just live in a place like this without some serious insulation. Houses here are built like bunkers with triple-paned windows and walls thicker than conspiracy theories. Every crack is sealed like it's holding back a blizzard, which it usually is. Roofs are steep to keep snow from piling up, unless you like climbing onto your ceiling with a shovel. And forget basements, because digging into permafrost is like trying to chisel marble with a spoon. Outhouses are common, because indoor plumbing is a fantasy that freezes in real time. Water is fetched in buckets, unless you're lucky enough to have a heated tank, indoors. Fires are always going, not for mood, but for survival because the cold doesn't knock at breaks in. Even the beds have extra padding layers of fur, and it's sometimes people sleep in shifts just to keep warm. There's no turning the thermostat up because the thermostat doesn't exist. Generators hum like lullabies, and every home smells faintly of wood smoke and resolve. Walking outside means mentally preparing for a 10-second countdown to frost. Coming back inside feels like returning from a moonwalk, and still families gather, laugh, and make soup like the cold isn't chewing at the walls. Because home isn't just a place, it's a heated promise. Now imagine going to school in this frostbitten fairy tale because kids here are built different. Classes are only canceled if temperatures drop below -52. Yes, that's the threshold, anything warmer. And it's business as usual with frozen backpacks and all. Children wear more layers than an onion on its wedding day. And recess is often just walking around in circles, pretending to enjoy hypothermia. Pencils snap from the cold, and ink pens freeze. So, it's all about that old-school graphite grind. Teachers come prepared with hot drinks, mittens, and the patience of snow-loving saints. The school buildings themselves are heated like tropical greenhouses in an Arctic world. Lunches are hot hearty and involve enough calories to fuel a snowplow. Nobody complains about cafeteria food because it's literally the warmest place in town. Snowball fights are discouraged, mostly because snow here is less ball and more ice shard. And you've never heard the sound of silence until you step into a classroom with 30 kids unzipping boots. Homework still happens because cold isn't an excuse. It's a lifestyle. Even field trips are strategic indoor locations like the library or possibly a less cold hallway. Education here isn't just about math and reading. It's about resilience, grit, and mastering the art of not freezing your tongue to the flagpole. You're probably wondering how people get around when nature is actively trying to freeze your tires. Cars in Oymyakon are never turned off completely because starting them from cold is a mechanical nightmare. Engines are kept warm with heated garages or giant blankets that look like car-sized sweaters. Drivers carry multiple batteries, engine heaters, and enough jumper cables to lasso a moose. Most vehicles here look like they've seen things like they just drove out of a survival movie. Public transport exists, but it's more like an extreme sport than a commute. Walking is common, but only in short bursts because long strolls are reserved for people with questionable judgment. Even animals walk fast here like they've got appointments with destiny. Horses are still used in some areas because hooves don't freeze as fast as tires. And snowmobiles are considered casual because skiing is reserved for when you actually enjoy suffering. Roads are maintained, but potholes turn into mini glaciers overnight. Travel is planned like a military operation, complete with snacks maps and emergency fur blankets. Running out of gas is not just inconvenient, it's a potential frozen tomb scenario. So everyone drives with extra supplies, hot tea, and sometimes even backup socks. Because in Oymyakon, mobility is a privilege earned through preparation. And traffic jams are less about honking and more about hoping the cold doesn't win. Pets in this icy wonderland are a breed of their own because survival includes fur and attitude. Dogs here aren't just pets. They're employees with benefits, thick coats, keen instincts, and the ability to sniff out danger. And dinner cats exist too, but they mostly judge from the windows and pretend they invented warmth. You haven't seen true loyalty until a dog curls around you during a power outage at -60. Feeding pets means thawing food, not just scooping from a bag, because everything freezes instantly. Even water bowls are heated like tiny spas. For the furry elite, animals have adapted alongside humans and somehow seem better at it. Local legends include dogs warning families about incoming snowstorms, or cats who refuse to leave warm spots even during fire drills. Livestock is raised carefully with barns heated like maternity wards. And yes, goats wear sweaters not because it's cute, but because frostbite is a real bully. Animal tracks in snow are like a community bulletin board. Every paw print a story, every trail a whisper of wild survival. In a land where even trees give up animals, carry the heartbeat of life, furry friends aren't just companions. They're teammates in a cold war. Let's talk recreation, because yes, people here still find ways to have fun. Ice fishing is a beloved pastime, mostly because it combines freezing with patience. The lakes freeze so solid you could host a car race on them, and sometimes they actually do. Saunas are sacred, not just for warmth, but for gossip tea and occasional dramatic exits into snow. Winter festivals happen because embracing absurdity is how you survive the chill. There are competitions for furthest boiling water throw and fastest frostbite jokes. Kids sled down hills that double as small mountains and build snowmen with scowls. Sports include hockey, of course, because swinging sticks in cold weather builds character. There are even concerts held outdoors with instruments that pray not to crack. And when the sun shines, which it does briefly, people dance like lizards in heat waves. Art includes snow sculptures that last longer than friendships. And photography is a challenge because cameras freeze faster than smiles. But still, people capture moments, memories, and frozen eyelashes. Because laughter and joy are better than thermal insulation. And in the coldest town on earth, people still celebrate being alive. Now, you might think all this cold would make people distant, quiet, or grumpy. But the warmth of Oymyakon is found in its people, not its temperature. Hospitality here is a survival code, not just a social grace. Guests are welcomed with hot meals, warm seats, and stories that melt the chill. Neighbors look out for each other because in this place, kindness keeps you alive. If your firewood runs out, someone shows up with more without asking. If your door freezes shut, help arrives with an axe and a smile. Celebrations happen indoors with laughter echoing through thick walls. Birthdays, holidays, and random Tuesdays become reasons to share food and stories. There's music, dancing, and yes, vodka, but always with moderation and mutual respect. Even funerals carry dignity wrapped in layers of memory and tradition. Children learn early that strength means compassion and courage means community. No one survives alone here, and no one is left behind. Because in Oymyakon, survival is shared. And the cold may bite, but the people hug harder. Let's shift focus to nature itself. Because even in this frozen expanse, life finds a way. Snow blankets stretch endlessly glittering under weak sunlight like crushed diamonds. Auroras dance above at night, painting the sky with ghostly greens and purples. The silence here is not empty, it's thick, deep, almost sacred. Wolves roam the edges of towns cautious, curious and wild. Foxes dart like whispers across fields, their red fur sharp against the white. Ravens circle overhead, black commas in a snowy sentence. Even the trees stand like sentinels, frozen yet alive. Boreal forests stretch across ridges, their pines heavy with snow, and in spring, a rare miracle occurs. As buds push through permafrost, wildflowers bloom briefly defiantly like colorful jokes. Told to winter birdsong returns tentative at first, then loud, proud, unstoppable. The land exhales slowly, shaking off months of sleep. Animals awaken, routines resume, and the river cracks with purpose. Because here, even nature knows how to rest and rise again. And in Oymyakon, the earth itself wears a winter coat, stitched with stories. You wander deeper into the dream city, following a path paved with glowing moss. Each step feels softer than the last, as if the ground is made of clouds. You hear distant laughter, like someone just told a really good joke. But when you look around, no one is there. Only lampposts, gently nodding in the wind. A warm breeze carries the scent of vanilla and old books. You feel your thoughts slowing down as if even your mind is getting ready to nap. The buildings around you seem taller now, but they lean inward like they are listening. Their windows blink, like sleepy eyes watching your every move, with kindness. A small cat crosses your path, wearing a silver ribbon, and winks at you. You follow it instinctively, without thinking twice. It leads you through an alleyway that hums with quiet music. The walls are painted with moving murals, telling stories of people who once dreamed here. Your heart feels light, like it's floating right out of your chest. You pause and take a deep breath, and somehow it feels like you're breathing in stars. The cat turns a corner and disappears, but you're not worried at all. You step into a courtyard filled with giant flowers taller than trees. They sway side to side like they're dancing just for you. The petals shimmer with colors you've never seen before, not even in real life. One flower leans down and offers you a soft place to sit. You settle in, and the petals curl gently around you like a blanket. Above your head, fireflies blink slowly like a light show meant to calm your soul. You feel like you're sitting inside a lullaby made of scent and light. The air is thick with lavender and moonlight and a faint memory of a good dream. You hear whispers again. This time, they're telling you stories of kindness. A story about a fox that returned a stolen gem just because it felt right. A tale about a child who hugged a cloud and made it rain candy. You smile, even though no one is looking, because everything just feels right here. The flower gently rocks you side to side like a cradle in the sky. For a moment, you forget your name, your age, and even your worries. All that matters is that you're safe, and this flower thinks you're special. As you stand up, the flower gives you a glowing seed and tells you without words to plant it. You find a soft patch of soil nearby and press the seed into the ground. The soil giggles softly, as if tickled, and starts to glow from underneath. A tree grows, instantly stretching into the sky, with no hesitation. Its leaves look like paper, and its trunk smells like cinnamon. A staircase spirals around the trunk, inviting you to climb. You place one foot on the first step, and suddenly, your shoes disappear. You laugh softly, because of course this tree prefers bare feet. As you climb, the tree starts to hum a gentle melody, just for you. Each step sings a note, and together they make a bedtime song. You notice stars getting closer with every step you take. It's like climbing into space, but without any fear at all. Your body feels light, your thoughts even lighter. There's a calm joy building inside you with each breath. At the top of the tree, there's a hammock made of starlight and dreams. You lie down in the hammock, and it gently rocks you side to side. Below you, the dream city sparkles, like a blanket made of fireflies. Above you, galaxies twirl slowly, as if they're showing off just for you. The air smells like midnight and hope, and maybe a little bit of sugar. You close your eyes for a moment, but your mind stays awake, just enough to notice a comet passes by, trailing laughter and soft jazz. You feel no need to move or speak. Everything is already perfect. The hammock sings a soft tune that only you can hear. It tells you you're doing great, even if you don't always feel like it. It reminds you that rest is powerful, and dreaming is a kind of magic. You smile as you let go of your worries one by one, like feathers on the wind. Each feather floats into the night sky and becomes a little star. The stars thank you in their own silent, twinkling way. And for the first time in a long time, you feel seen, not by people, but by the entire peaceful universe. Just as you begin to drift off, a balloon floats into view carrying a tiny envelope. It hovers above your hammock and waits politely for you to notice. You reach up and take the envelope, and it feels warm, like it's been holding sunlight. Inside is a note written in your own handwriting, though you don't remember writing it. It says, "You are safe, you are loved, and you deserve deep, peaceful rest." You fold the note and place it over your heart, where it melts into your chest. The balloon gives a gentle nod and floats away into the stars. You watch it go, and for a second you feel like you're floating with it. A quiet joy settles over you like a cozy blanket fresh from the dryer. You feel your breath deepen without trying, your shoulders relax without effort. Everything that worried you feels very far away now. You hear the hammock whisper goodnight. It sounds like the perfect lullaby. The stars above dim, just a little to help you sleep better. Even your thoughts start speaking slower and softer. You are here, and that's all you need to be. Somewhere nearby, a bell chimes. Once, twice, then stops. The sound echoes through the dream city like a soft heartbeat. Every window flickers with candlelight for just a moment. It's as if the whole world is preparing to sleep with you. Even the flowers fold in their petals and sigh contentedly. The wind slows down and curls around your hammock like a cat. You hear gentle waves in the distance, even though you're high above the ground. It feels like you're floating on a sleepy ocean made of stars. You think of all the people you've ever cared for and wish them rest. Your chest feels full and soft, like someone wrapped love around your ribs. A single cloud drifts by and leaves behind the scent of chamomile. You laugh gently because you didn't know clouds could be so thoughtful. The universe seems to nod, as if agreeing with you. You close your eyes and feel yourself becoming a story in someone else's dream, and that idea makes you smile as sleep tugs softly at your thoughts. The city beneath you begins to fade like morning mist. Shadows stretch and blend into the stars without a sound. You feel time loosen its grip, like it knows you don't need it here. There is no schedule in the sky, only comfort and calm. You see shapes in the clouds, a fox, a castle, a slow, dancing whale. Each one drifts by as if they too are going home to sleep. You wonder briefly where dreams go when we forget them. Maybe they turn into stars or stories or lullabies for someone else. You reach out and touch a passing cloud and it hums quietly. It feels like touching memory, like something you once loved. The air tastes like honey and bedtime and soft goodbyes. You feel yourself getting lighter, like your body is turning into mist. Your name sounds distant, like someone calling it from underwater. You smile because you know this moment is exactly what you needed. You are not lost. You are simply floating deeper into peace. From far away, you hear a gentle voice telling you a story. The words are fuzzy, like they're wrapped in cotton. You can't understand them, and that's okay. They make you feel safe without needing to explain anything. Maybe it's the moon talking, or the tree, or a memory of someone kind. Whatever it is, it speaks in a rhythm that matches your breath. Each word lands softly like a snowflake on your eyelids. You feel the story curling around you like a nest. It has no beginning or end, just gentle middle. A bird sings, once high and clear, and then everything is quiet again. You feel time folding around you like a secret. The stars blink slower now, like even they are ready to nap. You let your thoughts wander wherever they want, without control. There is no need to understand, only to rest. And you do with all your heart. You dream of a dream within a dream where everything is made of calm. Mountains hum lullabies, and rivers whisper compliments. Even the sky yawns and stretches like a sleepy cat. You walk through meadows where grass bows to greet you. Nothing asks anything from you, not even your attention. You feel free, not in a loud way, but like a quiet song. Clouds drift low to rest their heads on mountaintops. A butterfly lands on your finger and thanks you for existing. You smile without meaning to, and it feels perfect. Everything here moves slowly and kindly. A deer made of stardust looks at you with understanding. Its eyes say, "What words never could? You are enough." You follow it for a while, through twilight and dreams. You don't ask where it's going, you just walk. Because peace doesn't need directions. At the edge of the dream, a gate made of moonbeams waits. It doesn't open or close, it just listens. You stand before it and take a deep breath, full of light. Behind you, the dream city flickers like a candle about to sleep. Ahead of you is nothing and everything, both at once. You step forward and feel like you're stepping into your own heartbeat. It's warm and soft and echoes with kindness. There's no fear, only quiet acceptance, like the universe saying yes. You don't remember when you started walking or where you were going. But somehow, you've arrived, and that's all that matters. You sit on the grass, beyond the gate, and look at your hands. They glow faintly, like you've held stars and forgotten. The sky wraps around you like a friend who knows your favorite songs. You feel your breath slow, your heartbeat match the rhythm of the stars. And finally, you let go and rest completely. The houseboat moved gently across the glimmering midnight river. Lanterns on both sides flickered as if whispering lullabies. Elara sat by the window with a cup of moonberry tea. The tea always knew what mood you were in. Tonight, it tasted like soft vanilla clouds and cinnamon whispers. Outside, the water reflected stars like a mirror of forgotten wishes. An owl flew past, slowly wearing a tiny golden necklace. Maybe it belonged to the Dream King from the floating palace. Maybe the owl was on an errand of sleep and comfort. Elara didn't ask because in this world, you never question magic. She just leaned back and listened to the hum of the water, each ripple saying something in a language only the heart understands. She pulled her blanket higher and watched the river bend ahead. She saw lights shaped like jellyfish in the sky, and that meant the dream market was close. The dream market opened only when the sky was sleepy enough. And tonight the sky had already tucked. In the last cloud, Elara stepped off the houseboat and onto a bridge made of piano keys. Each step she took played a gentle note that echoed into the stars. Vendors at the market sold jars of lightning bug laughter. Some sold paper boats that carried messages to future selves. Others offered floating books that told bedtime stories to themselves. There was a stand run by a sleeping cat that sold memory dust. Another booth gave away bottles of silence wrapped in lullaby cloth. Elara chose a snow globe filled with yesterday's happiest moment. She shook it and watched tiny glowing memories swirl like feathers. A woman with 1,000 earrings smiled and handed her a dream map. The map changed every time you blinked and smelled like marshmallow air. Elara put it in her coat pocket and didn't ask questions. Because again, in this world, you never question magic. The path from the market led to a tunnel made entirely of bedtime songs. Every wall hummed a soft melody that made the stars sigh in relief. The floor was made of velvet petals and glowed in a gentle blue hue. Elara walked slowly, afraid she might wake up if she moved too fast. She passed a family of cloud foxes curled together in sleep. One of the foxes opened an eye and gifted her a yawn. Yawns were very valuable in this world, especially slow ones. She placed the yawn gently into her pocket next to the dream map. Further in the tunnel, she found a door shaped like a teacup. When she knocked, the door melted into rose-scented air. Behind it was a room full of floating beds with glowing headboards. Each bed had a name tag from someone in the waking world. People who had forgotten how to rest found peace here. Elara did not lie down, but placed a kiss on one empty pillow because she knew someone would need it later. Outside the tunnel was a hill that whispered to itself constantly. The grass was made of folded notes and tiny pieces of poems. Each breeze carried pieces of old lullabies lost in time. Elara climbed the hill and listened to the wind's little secrets. She learned that clouds keep their favorite dreams in glass jars, that the stars talk to each other in long blinking sentences, and that sometimes the moon writes letters to lonely mountains. At the top of the hill stood a tree made of melted hourglasses. Its branches shimmered with liquid time, frozen mid-drip. Elara touched one leaf and heard her childhood laugh back at her. Another leaf played the sound of her grandmother, humming. The tree asked her gently if she wanted to add a memory. She thought about it for a moment with her eyes closed, then gave the tree a moment of silence she once shared with someone. The tree bowed in gratitude and sang her name softly. As she walked down the other side of the hill, the world turned lavender. The sky now wore a sweater of sleepy twilight colors. Fireflies shaped like letters floated around, forming forgotten words. Elara caught one, and it spelled out her favorite dream from last year. She smiled and released it back into the slow wind. The path ahead led to a garden that only bloomed after 2 a.m. Every flower there had petals made of calm sighs. They opened not with sunlight, but with kind thoughts. Elara touched a flower, and it whispered a compliment. Another brushed her wrist and left a soft giggle behind. In the center of the garden stood a fountain of melted stardust. The water there sparkled like silver lullabies in motion. She filled a small bottle with it and labeled it Comfort. A nearby note read, "Share this only with someone who forgets they matter." She nodded and placed it in her satchel quietly. A narrow wooden bridge floated above a lake of half-dreams. Some dreams below were blurry and some were clear as crystals. Elara walked slowly and peered into the water's gentle reflection. She saw a version of herself sitting under a tree reading to a kitten. Another version danced barefoot with rain clouds in a meadow. Further along, she saw herself floating peacefully in a bubble. These were all dreams she never remembered after waking. Now they lived here, like forgotten melodies waiting for closure. She dipped her fingers into the water, and a memory sparkled upward. It was the sound of her father, humming during long car rides, a song without lyrics but filled with protection. She carried it gently and pressed it against her chest. The water below shimmered in approval without making a sound. On the other side of the bridge, a silver owl waited quietly. He was ready to take her to the final resting hill. The owl did not speak, but offered his wing for her to hold. As soon as she touched it, the sky stretched and yawned. They flew slowly through loops of soft wind and dream smoke. Below them, the world turned into a patchwork quilt of sleepy memories. They passed over lullaby towns and storybook rivers, over mountaintops shaped like pillows, and caves filled with purring. Elara closed her eyes for a moment and tasted calm on her tongue. When she opened them, they were above the final hill of release. This was where souls let go of their old worries every night. No one was forced to drop their pain, but the air encouraged it. Elara stepped off the owl's back on a grass that breathed deeply. She placed her satchel down and opened her palm to the sky. The yawn the fox gave her floated upward like a cloud. It spread across the stars like a ripple of peace. And somewhere, someone fell asleep more gently than before. The hill sang a slow melody made of comfort and old kindness. Elara sat down and let her hair drift in the breeze like ribbon. Around her, other travelers sat quietly smiling in their sleep. Some held feathers, some held books. Others simply held their breath. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the memory snow globe. It showed her dancing barefoot on a forgotten beach at sunrise. She gave the globe a final shake and set it gently beside her. A squirrel wearing a vest came and carried it to the Museum of Rests. In the distance, a harp played by invisible hands began to hum. The sound made even the stars blink slower in the sky. Elara leaned back and looked up one last time before her eyes closed. The clouds had formed a soft welcome back message. She whispered "thank you" without moving her lips, and let her last waking thought be a promise to return. Not just for her, but for anyone still learning to sleep. Back on the river, the houseboat waited without a single splash. The tea inside was still warm, and the blanket still held her shape. A tiny note lay on the pillow, written in glowing thread. It read, "Your dream has been recorded and stored in the sky." Beside it lay a tiny box that pulsed like a heartbeat. Elara's essence had left behind one more gift. A song made of silence for anyone needing stillness. The boat rocked gently as if nodding in agreement. Somewhere a child smiled in sleep without knowing why. A cat in a city yawned and curled tighter into their dream. An old man remembered a laugh from 50 years ago. And a woman who hadn't dreamed in months finally did, all because Elara let go and wandered where few dare to go, into the field of sleep with her heart wide open and her hands full of story. Now the stars have dimmed just a little to make room for dreams. And the sky has turned its face gently toward tomorrow. The dream market is closing with a soft ringing of wind chimes. Lanterns are being tucked into velvet pockets of sky. The floating beds have drifted into the arms of clouds. The owl has returned to his perch, humming with memory, and the hill of release grows quieter with every second. Somewhere the piano bridge plays its last lullaby of the night. The teacup door has faded into rose fog once again, and the cloud foxes are snoring in a circle of warmth. The dream map glows faintly in a pocket no longer there, but its path remains for anyone still wandering in darkness. So if tonight your heart feels too loud to sleep, close your eyes and listen for the world Elara walked through, because it's always there, waiting just past the noise. The sky turns softer, like velvet curtains being drawn. Your blanket of clouds wrapped around you so gently. The stars blinked above, like they were shy. Tonight, You could hear the wind humming, like a lullaby, in your ear. The moon leaned closer, as if trying to whisper secrets. You didn't move much now, just floated like a petal on still water. A warm hush settled around your thoughts, like a soft fog. Everything you remembered from the day seemed far away. Even your worries looked smaller than tiny toy boats. Now time wasn't ticking, it was stretching like a soft ribbon in the air. You started to feel like you were in someone else's dream, maybe a cat's, or maybe a child's, who dreamed of flying. Everything inside you was light, like feathers in a breeze. The world below had no sound, only distant glowing lights, and your mind drifted, quietly like a leaf falling without fear. Now you were walking barefoot on a path made of soft stars. They didn't burn. They tickled your toes with little giggles. Trees lined the way, tall and blue with glowing fruit. When you touched one, the fruit sang a small song for you. You picked it, and it turned into a glowing marble of joy. The sky here was lavender, and always just before sunrise. Creatures with feathered ears watched from a distance, smiling. None of them spoke, but you understood them perfectly. They knew your name, not the one that people use, but the deep one. The name. Only the wind and old trees remember. It felt good, hearing it again, like a hug, in sound form. Every step you took, the stars beneath you changed colors. You laughed softly because your laugh changed the colors too. The stars liked you, and you liked being here. It was quiet, but not lonely. Peaceful, but not empty. Up ahead was a lake that reflected not just the sky. It showed your favorite memories like a moving painting. You saw your happiest laugh captured in a ripple. You saw a memory of someone holding your hand gently, and then a picture of you resting under a summer sun. The lake had no edge. It just blended into the clouds. You sat beside it and dipped your fingers in. It felt like the warmth of someone who truly cares. Each drop that fell from your hand became a new star. You were creating constellations just by remembering. Behind you, the trees swayed like they were listening. The wind carried your thoughts and turned them into flowers. Each flower floated up and joined the sky above. You watched them go, feeling lighter with each one. Nothing here wanted to rush. Everything had time. A bird, made of sunlight, landed softly on your shoulder. It had no weight, only warmth and kindness. It leaned in and shared a sound, not quite a word. The sound made you feel like you belonged completely. The bird flew off, leaving a trail of sparkling peace. You followed the trail, and it led you to a garden. The flowers here glowed with laughter and quiet stories. Some flowers opened when you thought of good things. Others opened when you breathed slowly and deeply. The garden shifted as you walked, as if it knew your path. You felt like the garden had been waiting just for you. A swing hung from a cloud, shaped like a memory. You sat on it and gently rocked back and forth. Each swing carried you deeper into comfort and calm. The garden smiled, even though it had no face. As you rocked on the swing, the sky began to hum. It wasn't music, but it felt like a familiar tune. You could feel it in your chest, like a soft drum beat. The clouds above shifted into shapes you knew. A teddy bear from childhood, a mountain you once saw, a heart with wings floating slowly toward the moon. These shapes made you feel safe, like home never left. The swing slowed and let you down onto soft grass. Now the stars were close enough to touch again. They danced when you looked at them like fireflies. One landed in palm and felt like a kitten's purr. You laughed again, and the grass lit up with golden lights. Everything around you seemed to breathe with you. You and the night were sharing the same dream, and the dream had no end, just soft beginnings. You walked into a gentle mist that smelled like childhood. You carried hints of pancakes and crayons and fresh rain. The mist wrapped around you like a favorite blanket. Voices of old friends echoed in the distance, playfully. Each voice made your heart lift like a balloon. You didn't chase the voices, they came to you slowly. One by one, they turned into little lanterns of light. They floated around you, lighting your way forward. No shadows, followed only soft glows and smiles. A soft animal shape walked beside you, a memory maybe. It didn't speak, but it knew where to go. You both walked together, in silence that felt like music. Ahead, a hill rose up with tiny steps of moonlight. You started climbing without thinking or trying. The air felt cleaner the higher you went. At the top of the hill was a door with no walls. It stood there glowing with gentle curiosity. You didn't need to knock. The door already knew you. It opened into a room filled with soft wind and comfort. The walls were made of moments you once loved deeply. Each wall held a smile, a tear, a hug, a quiet joy. You sat in the middle and just breathed slowly. Every breath added a new star to the room's ceiling. Soon the whole ceiling twinkled like a personal galaxy. You felt at home in a way that was deeper than words. There was no past or future, just this glowing now. The floor was warm, like sand in morning sun. You lay down and felt your heart sinking with the stars. It didn't matter where you came from or where you go. Only this moment of peace held you now. The wind picked up and gently lifted you again. This time, it took you higher, above the dream garden. You could see the whole dreamland stretching forever, mountains made of music, rivers flowing with warmth, cities shaped like books, clouds that rained sweet poems. You floated past them slowly like a soft leaf in spring. Nothing rushed you, everything made space for you. A deer made of clouds ran below, waving its head. Above you, the stars aligned to form a soft lullaby. You listened with your whole body, not just your ears. Every wordless note relaxed your thoughts completely. Below you, the garden waved goodbye with glowing leaves. You smiled, knowing you could return anytime. This world was built from your heart and peace, and it would always welcome you gently. Soon the wind slowed and placed you on a bed of feathers. The feathers adjusted to your shape like a hug. A canopy above sparkled with soft moving lights. The lights weren't stars, but dreams of other dreamers. You felt their kindness, and they felt yours. No one was alone here, not even in silence. You closed your eyes, again, feeling weightless and calm. A voice like a breeze whispered, "Thank you for dreaming." It wasn't outside. It came from within your heart. Your breath matched the rhythm of the sky's quiet hum. You didn't need to hold on. Everything held you gently. The world around dimmed like twilight, turning into night, and you felt yourself melting into the quiet space. There was nothing more to chase or reach. Only rest, only softness, only peace. Now you were part of the sky, the stars, the gentle hush. Your thoughts floated like clouds that forgot how to worry. Your heartbeat slowed like a lullaby coming to an end. But not a real end, just the kind that fades softly. You could hear the dreams of the ocean far below. They spoke in waves of quiet trust and patience. You smiled, even though your eyes were now closed. Everything you ever needed was already within you. The stars above stayed to keep watch all night. They blinked slowly as if breathing with you. The wind curled around you like a protective friend. Time was no longer something to count. It was something to rest inside without effort. And in that endless, gentle moment, you fully let go. Wrapped in warmth, trust stillness, and sleep. The quiet footsteps of the cat echoed softly across the wooden floor of the dream shop. She paused at every aisle, where the jars of stardust glowed in shades of lavender and blue. Each jar held a tiny breeze, a frozen laugh, or a whisper from a child's memory. The shopkeeper watched with eyes like moons, never interrupting the silence. He knew the cat was not here to steal, but to remember. A clock ticked, without hands in the corner, spinning time in a soft spiral. The cat leapt gently onto the counter, curling beside a bowl filled with sleepy giggles. A soft hum began to rise from the walls of the shop, wrapping around like a lullaby. Outside, the street was lined with glowing mushrooms that bowed as the cat passed. Lanterns floated above, like bubbles carrying the dreams of those still awake. A child's toy train puffed along the edge of the shelf, leaving behind smoke that smelled like cinnamon. The dream shop did not close. It only blinked away. When it was no longer needed, the cat blinked slowly, her whiskers twitching as she listened to the walls breathe. She leapt down again, her tail brushing against the floor like a paintbrush. And the moment she left the shop, began to dissolve like mist at dawn. Beyond the village, there was a hill that only appeared when the wind remembered its name. It was a soft rolling hill, covered in petals, that glowed faintly with forgotten lullabies. Each step on the hill released a sound like the sigh of a contented cloud. Birds without feathers, but made entirely of light, circled above, singing notes of memory. A traveler with tired eyes climbed the hill, carrying nothing but a teacup. With each breath he took, the hill responded with warmth like an old friend. Tiny umbrellas grew from the ground, opening to offer shade from moonlight. The traveler sat at the top, sipping invisible tea that tasted like dreams not yet dreamt. All around him, the wind told stories in a language only hearts could understand. It was here where time waited, not ticking forward or back, just listening. A violin played itself nearby, balanced on a rock carved with sleepy faces. Its music drifted into the clouds, curling around stars like silk. The man listened without trying to understand, because understanding was never the point. When he finished his tea, the hill bowed gently beneath him, and the wind carried him back down, wrapped in the softness of contentment. In a lake made entirely of melted moonlight, there floated a boat with no oars. The boat knew where to go, because the lake whispered directions with every ripple. A girl, with hair like rivers, sat inside, wrapped in a coat stitched from midnight. She dipped her hand into the lake and pulled out a single note from an old piano. The note fluttered in the air like a moth, then rested gently on her shoulder. All around her, the lake shimmered with the colors of unspoken wishes. Fish made of candlelight swam beneath her, casting gentle glows upward. She closed her eyes and let the boat take her wherever it needed to. Islands drifted by, covered in trees that grew lullabies instead of leaves. Stars reflected in the water blinked in time with her heartbeat. A soft breeze whispered secrets that had no need to be kept. Above her, the sky hummed like a quiet choir of distant friends. She smiled because even silence felt like company in that place. The lake sighed and turned slowly, its edges curling like pages. The girl leaned back, her hair floating behind like a comet's tail. And the boat drifted on until the lake became nothing but stardust again. There was a village where people walked on soft threads of music instead of roads. Each note supported them like the promise of a good dream. The villagers wore clothes that shimmered when touched by kindness. Doors opened only when someone hummed a melody from the heart. At sunset, the entire village gathered in the square to listen to the clouds. Because in that place, clouds spoke in rhythms and rain fell in patterns of joy. Children played with echoes that bounced around like glowing balloons. And every tree had wind chimes for leaves ringing softly with every breeze. A baker kneaded dough that smelled like laughter and warmth. He gave bread to anyone who smiled with their eyes. A woman painted stories into the sky with a brush made of her own memories. Each stroke released the scent of lavender in old books. The village never slept. It simply changed tempo as the stars came out. And when the moon was full, it played a lullaby so deep it felt like floating. There, in that village, every step felt like a song remembered there from childhood. A mirror hung in a cottage at the edge of the dream forest. But it did not reflect your face, only your favorite memory. Whoever looked into it was filled with a quiet joy impossible to explain. An old man lived there, keeping the mirror dusted and the tea always warm. He invited travelers to sit, share stories, or just sit in silence. His cottage smelled of cinnamon, old paper, and sleepy wishes. Books lined the walls, their pages blank until read with kindness. The fire crackled softly, telling jokes only the kettle understood. Outside, the wind danced with the leaves and whispered news from far dreams. The man's cat purred with a rhythm that calmed even the loudest thoughts. Visitors came from everywhere, carried by the need to feel whole again. They left notes tucked in books that turned into flowers overnight. One evening, a young girl arrived, holding a key with no door. The man smiled, offered her tea, and pointed to the mirror. She saw not her past, but a dream she had forgotten to chase. And for the first time in years, her heart hummed like spring rain. Beneath a bridge made of forgotten songs, there flowed a river of sleepy echoes. The water carried the sound of lullabies once sung to stars now long gone. A boy sat on the edge with feet dangling into the cool melody below. He whispered secrets into the ripples, which turned into glowing petals. Fireflies danced in patterns shaped like old bedtime rhymes. The bridge hummed softly, as if remembering every child who had passed by. On the other side of the river, a meadow bloomed with dreams never spoken aloud. The grass swayed like it was listening to a lullaby only the moon could hear. A rabbit with silver ears offered to the boy a compass made from a thimble and wind. He took it and smiled as the stars reflected in his eyes like stories waiting to unfold. The boy stood, letting the river's voice carry him forward with calm assurance. Each step he took felt like walking through a memory of a hug. The petals swirled around him, wrapping him in warmth and gentle promises. The bridge behind faded slowly, becoming part of the dream again. And ahead the meadow glowed brighter, welcoming him like a forgotten friend. In a corner of the sky, where the clouds stitched blankets from old songs, a whale made of stars swam slowly, trailing dreams like a comet tail. Children who had fallen asleep with books open floated gently on moonbeams. The whale sang a song so soft it could only be heard with your heart. Each note carried a wish someone forgot to make before bedtime. The children held hands, dreaming together, even though they had never met. Their dreams wove into each other, forming tapestries of glowing memories. One child reached out and touched a falling star that turned into a small melody. It whispered thank you and curled up in her palm like a kitten of light. Around them, stardust settled into patterns of slow breathing and sleepy thoughts. The whale turned gracefully, circling them like a guardian made of music. Its eyes held oceans of comfort deeper than the longest hug. As it swam upward, it left behind trails of soft color like warm sighs. The children drifted gently downward back into their beds, wrapped in wonder, and the whale disappeared into the clouds, carrying their dreams with care. Inside a lighthouse that never guided ships, only dreams stood. A girl with starry shoes. She spun slowly on the floor, where each tile was a map of someone's forgotten hope. The light at the top did not shine, but whispered lullabies into the wind. Every evening she lit candles made from old wishes and placed them in the windows. Birds of mist flew to the flame, gathering the warmth for sleepers far away. A music box played by itself, echoing through the spiral stairs like a gentle breeze. The girl kept a journal filled with dreams she caught in glass jars. Each dream glowed differently, some bright as laughter, some soft as comfort. She never opened the jars, only listened as they hummed in harmony. Outside the sea didn't roar, but murmured softly, as if telling bedtime stories. Ships never passed, because this lighthouse only guided wandering hearts. One night, the girl opened the tallest window and let the lullaby float free. It drifted across waves, curling through windows and settling into pillows. The world grew quieter as her song wrapped around it like a velvet ribbon. And the girl smiled, knowing someone somewhere just slept a little easier. At the base of a cloud-shaped mountain, there sat a tree with leaves like feathers. Each leaf sang a soft note when touched by wind or gentle thought. A little fox curled beneath it, resting after a long journey through sleepy winds. The tree had watched over dreamers for hundreds of peaceful nights. It did not speak in words, but in feelings like the comfort of warm blankets. Every branch stretched toward the stars like arms reaching for lullabies. The fox dreamed of glowing rabbits that danced across bridges made of silence. In the distance, a slow melody echoed from the mountain's silver caves. It was a song sung only by dreams that dared to wander too far. The tree listened and swayed, humming in harmony with the sleepy earth. A squirrel floated by holding a balloon filled with someone's good memory. It nodded at the fox, then continued drifting toward the velvet clouds. The sky darkened, but never turned black, only a deep blue filled with promise. The stars blinked slowly, as if yawning before their nightly glow. And the mountain let out a long, soft breath, wrapping the world in peace. Far beyond the meadows, where the sleepy frogs played lullabies on lily pads, there existed a windmill that turned not by breeze but by dreams alone. It stood in the center of a field where no one spoke, yet everyone felt understood. The sails of the windmill were stitched from pieces of bedtime stories. Each time it spun, the air filled with the scent of cocoa and whispered giggles. Inside lived an old woman who collected soft words and knitted them into scarves. She wore a crown of feathers and a smile that made even the stars relax. Children came to her in dreams, asking for stories that made them feel whole again. She never told the same tale twice, but each one felt like a hug from inside her voice, sounded like rocking chairs and old books on quiet shelves. Every morning she released her stories into the windmill, letting them fly away. The sails spun faster, and the sky lit up like fireflies winking in a slow dance. A boy once asked her how she never ran out of dreams to tell. She answered by holding his hand and letting him hear his own heartbeat. And in that rhythm he heard his first story written by the world just for him. In the middle of a sleepy forest where the trees hummed like lullabies, there stood a clock tower that never told time but whispered dreams. Its hands moved only when someone wished for a safe place to rest. At night, the tower rang, not with chimes, but with heartbeats of dreamers. Birds with paper wings flew around it carrying letters of unspoken thoughts. A girl with starlight in her hair sat at its base, reading books made of cloud. The ground around her bloomed with cushions shaped like forgotten hugs. She wrote poems on the breeze and watched them float into someone's window. Each poem turned into a melody and wrapped around sleepers like a blanket. The tower watched over her like a parent watching a child drift to sleep. Its stones glowed softly, absorbing the warmth of every quiet wish. Far above the clouds parted only to let moonlight kiss her shoulder. The girl whispered thank you to the night, as if it had answered her dream. And the wind carried her voice across the world like a soft lullaby. That night, every child who listened to the silence slept with a smile, near a quiet lake where water held memories like ripples in time. A boat floated endlessly, never docking, yet never drifting far. It was made from gentle promises and lined with glowing dreams. A boy sat in it, wrapped in a quilt sewn from his grandma's lullabies. He watched stars fall into the lake and turn into slow golden fish. Each fish swam in circles, forming shapes of songs not yet sung. The boat rocked gently with the rhythm of a heart about to dream. Around him, silence gathered like a trusted friend holding his hand. The boy reached into the water and pulled out a bell made of whisper. It rang softly, creating waves that only sleepy minds could hear. From the sky drifted feathers shaped like laughter from old times. One landed on his forehead and gave him a vision of peaceful lands. He smiled as the lake folded him in like a page of a bedtime story. The fish below glowed brighter, casting his face in gentle warmth. And the boat continued, floating into a dream without an end. High above the tallest tree, where owls dream of lullabies they never sang, a cloud floated still and silent, shaped like a cradle of forgotten stories. On it rested a lion, made of stars, who purred with the sound of rain. Its mane shimmered with tales that had never been told out loud. Beside it lay a child who had traveled too far into the world of dreams. They curled together, the lion breathing slowly, as if reading her thoughts. Around them, tiny comets danced in slow circles like sleepy fireflies. Each comet carried a bedtime wish someone forgot to speak at night. The child held one close and felt a memory she never knew she missed. The lion blinked once and shared its warmth like a midnight melody. Their cradle rocked gently in the soft wind of distant lullabies. No danger came here, only soft winds and glowing comfort. The child whispered a thank you into the lion's mane of light, and the cloud carried them both gently back toward the stars. As they disappeared, the sky yawned slowly like it too needed rest. Inside a cave, carved from echoes and tucked beneath the dreaming hills, a garden grew without sunlight, only nourished by kindness and calm. The flowers hummed bedtime tunes and bloomed only when someone felt safe. A girl wandered here, each night wearing slippers made from stardust. She carried a basket filled with her gentle thoughts and patient hopes. As she stepped, each petal opened, releasing scents like slow music. In the middle of the garden sat a piano made from moonlight and moss. She played it without touching, as if her heartbeat made the music begin. The notes drifted into the cave, wrapping around its walls like warm hugs. Animals of light came closer, foxes made of glitter rabbits, shaped like sighs. They sat beside her, listening to songs that never needed words. She never looked away, always smiling as her soul poured into sound. The garden glowed brighter the more she played, as if growing with her spirit. And when she finally stood to leave, the piano kept playing her melody, filling the world with a promise that peace was always waiting here. On the edge of a sleepy town where dreams walked instead of feet, there was a bookstore open only when the moon reached its highest sigh. Its shelves held books that wrote themselves as people fell asleep. A kind old man with cloud-white hair kept the shop humming with warmth. He never spoke yet. Somehow, everyone felt like he had told them a story. Each book shimmered with soft pages made of memories and comfort. Children wandered in their dreams and picked titles they had never heard. One girl chose a book titled "The Hug That Saved a Dreamer's Heart." As she opened it, the shop faded and became a quiet beach of stars. She sat on the sand and read as waves rolled in with sleepy laughter. The ocean had no water, only sparkles and gentle lullaby rhythms. The story wrapped around her like a blanket, telling her she mattered. When she closed the book, she found herself back in her bed, smiling. The shopkeeper nodded somewhere far away, as if tucking her in. And the moon lowered a little, satisfied that she had been heard. In a quiet field where wind danced like a mother humming to herself, lay a quilt made of 1,000 sleepy sighs stitched by the stars. On it, children curled up, even though they had never seen each other. The sky bent gently downward, as if listening to their shared heartbeat. Each child dreamed of kindness and the warmth of being understood. The quilt shimmered softly, showing each of their dreams in its threads. A boy dreamed of flying without fear, and the thread turned sky blue. A girl dreamed of her grandma's arms, and the thread glowed golden. The field stayed still, letting their dreams rise like lanterns in the breeze. A fox walked by, leaving footprints made of wishes not yet spoken. It paused beside the quilt, watching with eyes full of silent lullabies. Then it vanished slowly, as if becoming part of the wind again. The children never stirred, only smiled as their breathing grew slower. The quilt lifted gently, as if hugging them one last time. And the stars above blinked slowly, whispering that they were safe. Near a mountain, shaped like a candle melting in slow moonlight, there stood a house with windows full of sleeping music notes. Inside lived a woman whose laugh could make even shadows yawn. She cooked dreams into soup and sang while the pots hummed back. Each night she opened her door and let the steam float into the sky, where it curled into shapes of comfort like hugs and bedtime songs. Children in their dreams followed the scent and found her porch. She served them bowls of calm filled with stars and soft memories. No one ever asked where she came from because it felt like she belonged. Her rocking chair creaked in tune with the heartbeat of dreamers. She told stories that felt like lullabies wrapped in warm blankets. Even after they left, the warmth stayed inside their chest like firelight. Her house never faded but drifted slowly through the clouds. And wherever it stopped, someone found rest in their dreams that night. The woman just smiled, rocking gently as the stars listened quietly. At the center of a maze built from moonbeams and sleepy thoughts, there was a pond that showed reflections not of faces, but of hopes. A girl wandered through the maze, holding a lantern made from laughter. With each turn, the walls whispered old bedtime tales she once knew. She never felt lost, only more curious with every quiet corner. The pond waited for her, rippling with the breath of soft stories. When she arrived, it showed her not herself, but her most peaceful memory. She reached in and pulled out a ribbon tied around a whisper. It wrapped around her wrist, pulsing like the rhythm of trust. The maze opened slowly, revealing a path of feathered steps. She walked home with the pond's reflection still glowing in her eyes. The lantern flickered not with flame, but with calm understanding. And the wind gently played with her hair as if singing goodnight. Behind her, the maze faded into starlight, waiting for another dreamer. while above the sky, tucked in the moon like a child beneath a quilt, in a sky that never darkened, only deepened into velvet comfort, there floated a swing hanging from nothing yet swinging with grace. On it sat a child, whose thoughts were made of lullabies and soft wishes. Each time they swung forward, stars leaned closer to listen. The child hummed a melody no one had taught, but everyone somehow knew. Beneath them, clouds gathered, like cushions made from sleepy giggles. Every swing backward pulled in memories that felt like hugs. Every swing forward released hope like fireflies from a jar. Around them, time slowed until it barely moved at all. The swing never stopped, only moved gently, like breathing in a dream. Child stretched out their arms, feeling the wind like a bedtime story. The universe rocked with them like a parent lulling the world to sleep. And the melody grew stronger, wrapping around the stars like silk. The swing drifted higher, becoming part of the sky itself. And the child smiled as if they had found where they truly belonged. At the very edge of a dream where silence folded into itself like a quilt, there stood a tower made from every yawn that had ever been shared. It reached into the stars, holding their glow like secret lullabies. A boy climbed its spiral stairs, carrying nothing but quiet in his heart. Each step lit up with memories of nights when he felt most loved. The top of the tower had no roof, only open sky, filled with sleepy colors. He sat at the edge legs dangling into the soft hum of the world. A breeze kissed his cheeks, carrying the scent of familiar warmth. The stars gathered around him, curious to hear his silent thoughts. He didn't speak, only looked up and let his breath become a song. The tower held him steady like arms that never let go. And for a moment the universe paused just to listen. The boy closed his eyes and let the quiet hold him like a lullaby. Around him the stars pulsed gently like they were breathing too. And somewhere below, a mother smiled, knowing her child felt safe. The wind outside started to whisper like it knew a secret. It carried with it the scent of lavender fields far beyond the hills. She closed her eyes and imagined lying there, barefoot, under the purple sky. The flowers swayed around her as if dancing to a silent lullaby. Every petal held a tiny glow like stars had dropped down to rest. The breeze was warm and wrapped around her like a silken ribbon. She felt her fingers brushing the tops of the flowers ever so gently. Each step she took made the ground hum with a sleepy little tune. Far ahead she saw a fox with golden eyes waiting quietly for her. It turned and started walking into the soft folds of the field. She followed without a question, as if this path was written just for her. The sky above had turned into a painting of pink and peach clouds. Birds shaped like folded paper floated peacefully in the air. She wasn't running. She wasn't afraid. She was simply floating along. And the world around her had become something softer than sleep. A soft bell echoed through the sky like the call of an ancient clock. She looked up and saw a tower rising out of the lavender waves. Its bricks were covered in ivy, and old stories whispered in green. The windows were glowing like candles lit in cozy little nooks. She reached the door, which opened without her even touching it. Inside was a spiral staircase made of polished moonstone. Each step she took made a gentle note play like a harp string. The tower smelled like old books and fresh bread and comfort. As she climbed higher, the air became cooler, like autumn dusk. There were paintings on the wall that blinked softly as she passed. Each one seemed to smile in their own sleepy sort of way. At the top, she found a room filled with floating feathers. And in the center was a chair made of clouds and stitched dreams. She sat down, and the room sighed like it had been waiting for her. And then it began to drift upward like a boat on a sleepy tide. The tower turned into a bubble and lifted off into the night sky. Stars swirled around her as if curious to meet her for the first time. They whispered stories in tiny, sparkling voices she couldn't quite hear. One star landed on her palm and curled up like a sleeping kitten. She felt warmth from it, like it carried 1,000 gentle memories. Below her, the world looked like a soft patchwork quilt of dreams. Lakes shimmered like melted silver, and forests breathed in slow rhythm. Mountains yawned as fog curled between them like lazy morning thoughts. The bubble passed a moon that had a sleepy smile and a knit cap. It nodded at her like it knew she belonged here among these skies. Other bubbles floated by, each carrying dreamers in cozy chairs. Some were children, hugging stuffed bears. Some were old men sipping tea. Some were dogs chasing clouds. Some were owls, reading maps made of light. And all of them looked so peaceful, so completely free of weight or worry, as if the world had remembered how to breathe slowly again. She reached out and touched the edge of her bubble, and it rippled. A song began to play from somewhere deep inside the sky itself. It wasn't made of words, but feelings, warm ones, kind ones. It wrapped around her heart like a lullaby, sung by the stars. Suddenly she remembered her grandmother's humming from long ago, and the scent of lemon tea and wool blankets in rainy afternoons. The bubble drifted closer to a cloud shaped like a grand piano, and it played itself softly as if the air had fingers of its own. Each note was a memory, not sharp, not sad, just gently glowing. A snowflake landed on her eyelash and melted without a sound. The stars dimmed a little, like they too were getting ready for sleep. She leaned back into her cloud chair and let out the softest sigh. Everything around her moved like a slow river in a forgotten valley. There was no time here, no rush, no noise, just the quiet of being. And for the first time in forever, her mind was absolutely still. Down below, her old room waited wrapped in shadows and quiet. The bed was still made with the sheets tucked like a cocoon. Her lamp flickered once as if waving to her from far away. Books sat like sentinels, keeping her dreams safe on the shelves. The wind gently rocked the curtains like a mother rocking a crib, but up here the sky cradled her in something deeper than sleep. She saw the shape of her own thoughts drifting away like birds. All the questions, all the worries, all the should-haves, and what-ifs. They turned into feathers and floated out of the bubble, silently. Nothing chased her anymore, not even time, not even memory. She was part of something that didn't need her to explain herself. Just to rest, just to breathe, just to be. And that was enough. A comet passed by, trailing a blanket of soft, shimmering peace. She smiled, without meaning to, as her heart beat in quiet rhythm. And the stars began to hum, again softer, now slower, more dreamlike. A distant bell rang, again, but this time it was inside her, calling her not to wake, but to wander even deeper inward. The bubble slowly lowered itself toward a garden in the clouds. Each flower there glowed like it had bloomed from a sweet secret. She stepped out, and her feet sank into grass made of silk and light. The trees around her leaned in like old friends, curious and kind. Birds with wings of parchment flew by, trailing ribbons of music. A swing hung from a tree, and she sat on it, gently swaying. Above her, the sky painted itself with shifting colors of calm blues that felt like forgiveness, purples that felt like understanding greens, that soothed like a quiet hand on your back. When you're tired, she pushed gently, and the swing rose higher with each breath she took. The clouds parted to reveal an ocean in the sky, reflecting her smile. And for the first time, in a long time, she didn't need to go anywhere. Because everything she had ever longed for was already holding her. There was a door in the garden made of sunlight and honey. It didn't need a key. It only needed a feeling to open. She placed her hand on it, and it became warm and weightless. Inside was a hallway where the floor sang with every step. Portraits on the wall showed scenes from dreams she hadn't had yet. There were children playing in forests lit by golden rain. There were cats wearing spectacles reading poems to mice. There were tiny houses on clouds with teapots steaming outside. She laughed, and the hallway laughed with her like an echo of joy. At the end of the hall was a room full of empty journals. She picked one up, and the pages filled themselves with glowing ink. Not words, but images of what peace looked like for her. A river, a firefly, a warm sweater, a deep breath. Each page was a soft reminder that her soul had always been listening. Even when the world had been too loud to hear it, She sat in that glowing library as the walls breathed like dreams. Books whispered to each other and smiled when she looked their way. A chair, made of dandelions, bloomed beneath her without a sound. She curled up into it like a cat, finding its favorite sunspot. Above her, a lantern floated down and filled the room with hush. The kind of hush that only exists between heartbeats and snowfall. She opened another journal and saw her future drawn in stardust. There were no instructions, no deadlines, just a quiet unfolding, a garden of days where each one bloomed in its own time. No rushing, no forcing, just the rhythm of real rest. Her eyelids became heavy, like velvet curtains drawn slowly. She whispered thank you into the silence, and it echoed back sweetly. The books closed their eyes, and the lantern dimmed to a glow. Even the hallway seemed to exhale and settle in for the night, and she drifted deeper into a sleep made of silver threads. The garden outside grew still, like the moment before a lullaby. Stars winked from the sky like sleepy children saying goodnight. The swing slowed and rested in the arms of the old tree. Petals fell like snowflakes, each one carrying a silent blessing. The wind no longer moved, just held the world gently in place. She was not floating anymore. She was resting in the very center, as if the universe had wrapped her in a cocoon of kindness. Nothing buzzed, nothing pressed, nothing pulled her from this moment. She was weightless, not because she had nothing, but because she needed nothing. The chair, the journal, the books, the stars, all waited with her. There was a patience in the air that felt like being truly known, not seen for what she did, but for what she quietly was. She was not broken, not behind, not too late. She was simply here. And here was enough, more than enough, soft as moonlight on skin. She exhaled once more and became one with the hush. In the softest part of the sky, a lullaby began to form. It wasn't music, not exactly just a feeling of complete warmth. It wrapped itself around her like the first light of morning, gentle quiet, whole, and full of slow, golden hope. Everything she had feared melted like mist in early sun. There were no edges, no endings, just gentle beginnings. A bed appeared in the middle of the garden, woven from starlight. She lay down, and the universe tucked her in without a word. The trees stood still. In respect, the clouds drifted like lullabies. And somewhere far off, a nightingale sang just once before sleeping. The stars blinked slower. The wind whispered one final breath, and sleep welcomed her home like a story finally finished. Not with a bang, not with a goodbye, but with a smile. The kind that says, rest now, dream now, all is well now. And the sky held her in silence, softer than anything she had ever known. The mountain breeze had turned softer, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. Leo sat on a mossy rock, watching the clouds roll like giant cotton islands. Above his hands, held a warm cup of herbal tea brewed by the village elder that morning. The warmth of the cup mirrored the comfort he felt deep inside his chest. Birds chirped like tiny flutes in the distance, creating a lazy afternoon melody. The trail before him sloped gently upward, disappearing into the slow-moving mist. He remembered stories the elder told about the fog, whispering ancient secrets. He imagined if he listened closely enough, he might hear the mountains speak back. Each sip of tea felt like a hug from nature itself. Slow and intentional, he traced a snail's path on a nearby leaf, wondering how it knew where to go. Time seemed to stretch, like taffy, soft and endless, and not at all demanding. A rabbit peeked out from behind a bush, then quickly retreated into the underbrush. Its tiny thump against the ground was almost too soft to notice. Leo smiled gently, letting his eyes follow the breeze rather than chase it. There was no place to be but here, and no moment more real than this one. Later that afternoon, Leo wandered further up the slope where the trees grew older. Their trunks were thick like ancient book spines covered in mossy stories. He reached out to one, pressing his palm against the bark, feeling time thrum inside. There was something sacred about touching a tree that had stood for centuries. A squirrel darted across a branch above, then paused to look curiously at him. Leo bowed his head slightly, as if greeting an old friend in the forest's council. The squirrel blinked once, then continued its leaf-scattering dash. Somewhere overhead, a raven called out low, and echoing like a forgotten spell. The mist thickened, but Leo felt no fear, only wonder. In the pull of silence, every step became a question, and every breath an answer, made of pine and peace. He walked until he found a circle of stones cradling a tiny fern in the middle. The fern shimmered with morning dew, though the sun had long since climbed. He knelt beside it, marveling at how something so small could hold such calm. As the wind whistled gently through the pines, Leo whispered a promise to return. The mountain heard him, and replied not with words, but with a hush of wind. Descending the path was like floating backward through a dream. The forest opened slowly, revealing glimpses of sky through sleepy branches. Leo's footsteps made soft crunches that faded into the growing evening hush. The village lights twinkled below like golden stars fallen into the earth. Children's laughter danced faintly up the hill like little chimes on the air. A dog barked, once a familiar voice in the fading distance calling him home. He reached a familiar curve in the path where the stones always shifted just so. There he paused as a fox stepped silently into view on the trail ahead. Its eyes were bright with knowing, but its body relaxed as if expecting him. Leo and the fox regarded each other in peaceful, quiet, neither in a rush. Then with a twitch of its ear, the fox turned and melted into the tall grass. Leo smiled softly, then continued walking, letting the moment rest in his pocket. The moon began to rise, just enough to paint the treetops in silver blush. He took one last glance at the ridge above and whispered a soft goodbye. And the wind carried his voice gently, as if tucking it into a bedtime lullaby. Back in the village, the fire had been lit, and the stones around it were warm. People gathered in quiet groups, speaking low, or simply watching the flames dance. Leo joined them, finding a seat beside the elder, who offered him a nod and bread. The stars above blinked slowly, as if watching over every quiet conversation. A pot of stew bubbled gently, its aroma thick with herbs and home. Someone played a flute. Softly, a tune that floated like mist over the circle. Children curled beside their mothers, listening to tales or watching sparks. Leo leaned back, resting against a smooth stone as the fire crackled in rhythm. He felt his body relax further with each breath as warmth soaked into his skin. The elder began a story in a voice like wind and soil and candlelight. It was about a mountain that once moved for love. In the silence that followed, everyone listened as if the stars themselves had paused to hear the tale. Leo closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to see the story more clearly inside. Each word settled gently into his thoughts, like petals falling on still water. And for a while, the world was only this fire, this voice, and this moment. As the night deepened, the villagers began drifting toward their homes slowly. The fire burned low, now only glowing like the heart of a sleeping ember. Leo stood stretching quietly and thanked the elder with a soft hand on the shoulder. The elder nodded without words, as if language might break the night's spell. The path to his cottage was lit by lanterns swaying in the soft wind. They cast dancing shadows that flickered along the stone steps and wooden fences. He passed a garden where tomatoes hung heavy and basil leaves curled in dreams. His front door creaked gently as he opened it, like a sigh, returning to stillness. Inside the cottage smelled of dried lavender and a hint of honeyed tea. He lit a single candle, its flame trembling just enough to feel alive. His bed was waiting beneath a window that framed the moon like a painting. Leo sat at the edge, removed his shoes, and listened to the floor settling. There was peace here in the small things in the worn wood and quiet corners. He laid down, pulling the soft blanket over his chest like a story closing, and just before sleep came, he smiled, knowing the mountain would be there tomorrow. The morning light tiptoed through the window like a curious child peeking in. Leo stirred gently as the scent of warm sun and wood filled his senses. Outside, the birds had already begun their songs, each note a small hello. He sat up slowly, letting the quiet wrap around him like a favorite shawl. His feet touched the cool floor, grounding him like roots to the earth. In the kitchen, the kettle began to sing its sleepy morning song. He poured water over dried herbs, letting the steam rise like a gentle cloud. Each breath he took was calm, steady, filled with the rhythm of a new day. The village was still waking, stretching under a sky painted in soft pastels. He stepped outside with his tea, letting the cool breeze kiss his face. The old dog from next door wagged its tail slowly as if greeting an old friend. Children passed by with sleepy eyes and school satchels dragging behind. A farmer waved from his cart filled with vegetables, fresh and proud. Leo waved back, feeling the heartbeat of the village in every quiet detail. And he knew once again that he belonged in this peaceful dance of simple moments. Later that day, Leo wandered down to the river where the water moved like silk. The trees along the banks leaned in as if whispering secrets to the stream. He sat on a sun-warmed rock and dipped his fingers into the cool current. Fish darted beneath the surface like shadows, playing hide-and-seek. The sky above was wide and open, dotted with clouds like drifting thoughts. A dragonfly hovered nearby, its wings catching light like stained glass. He watched it with quiet wonder, feeling time slow in its graceful flight. Leaves floated past, carrying the scent of the forest and the whisper of breeze. The sound of water lapping the stones was soft, like a lullaby humming. Leo leaned back, letting the sunlight rest on his closed eyelids gently. Somewhere, a bird called out its song, echoing across the sleepy hills. The river spoke in ripples and rhythms, not with words, but with feeling. A moment stretched where nothing was needed and everything was enough. He stayed there until the sun tilted west and shadows grew longer. Then he stood with gratitude in his chest and the river's peace in his steps. That evening, Leo helped the baker carry baskets of fresh bread to the square. The loaves were warm and wrapped in cloth. Smelling of rosemary, and home children ran up with coins clutched tightly, their eyes wide with excitement. Each piece handed out came with a smile and a soft thank you from young lips. The baker laughed a low, kind sound that made even the pigeons feel welcome. Old women chatted by the fountain, trading herbs and bits of sweet gossip. Musicians gathered under the oak tuning strings and warming their breath. A soft melody began curling through the air like smoke from a chimney. People hummed along, some swaying, others tapping their feet without thinking. Leo sat on the fountain's edge, eating a piece of bread still warm from the oven. He watched the faces around him, each one lit by firelight and gentle laughter. This was not a night of grand events, but one of quiet joy and shared hearts. The square glowed as if the stars had decided to come closer for a while. Even the moon seemed to linger longer, just to be part of the gathering, and Leo felt his heart breathe wide, like a window opening to the wind. As the music faded, the stars blinked above the villagers began to part ways. Lanterns were lit along the paths, flickering softly like fireflies in the dark. Leo walked slowly through the winding lanes, nodding at the last few good nights. A cool breeze swept through, carrying the scent of mint and dusk. He reached the edge of the village, where the fields stretched out like sleeping animals. The sound of crickets rose steady and sure, a song of the world at rest. He paused by the old fence where vines had begun to curl and bloom again. There was something sacred in this quiet, something unspoken, yet deeply felt. He placed a hand on the wooden rail, letting it remind him of seasons past. A fox called once from the woods, its voice sharp and clear like a distant bell. Leo looked up at the stars, which now covered the sky like a soft quilt of light. His breath moved slow and deep, as if breathing in the night itself. There was peace in not needing to know what tomorrow would bring. Only this moment, this path, this hush before sleep and dream. And with that, he turned back toward his home, where candlelight waited gently. Inside the cottage, the air was warm and smelled faintly of lemon balm. In stories, Leo placed a fresh flower in a small clay bowl by the window facing east. The candle still burned low, its flame swaying like a dancer. In no hurry, he removed his cloak, folding it neatly beside the wooden chest near his bed. A small book lay open on the table filled with sketches and mountain notes. He glanced at it, smiling at a drawing of the river and a line about dragonflies. Then he sat by the window, watching as a soft fog began to gather outside. The village lights now shimmered like tiny stars fallen to earth and finding rest. He sipped from a small cup of warm milk, its taste calm and familiar. The sounds of the night returned in layers like a lullaby in perfect rhythm. An owl hooted softly somewhere beyond the trees, watching and waiting. Leo's eyes grew heavy, his body leaning into the blanket of comfort around him. He whispered a quiet, "Thank you," to the day. Not for what happened, but for simply being. Then he lay down slowly, letting the night wrap around him like a soft goodbye. And as sleep came, he carried with him the river, the fire, the music, and the stars. The morning arrived slowly, brushing the sky with gentle tones of honey and rose. Leo opened his eyes to the sound of birds calling softly from the trees. The air inside the cottage was still carrying the dreams of the night before. He stretched like the old cat that sometimes visited his doorstep without a sound. His first steps were quiet, as if not to wake the sleeping wood beneath his feet. He placed a log into the hearth, letting it crackle with sleepy warmth. The kettle began to whisper, and he smiled at its familiar morning hum. Today felt like a day for walking, for listening, for noticing what often gets missed. Outside the world waited wrapped in a blanket of mist and dew. He stepped into it like someone stepping into an old story they had heard many times. The grass bowed under his feet, wet and shining like tiny mirrors of the sun. Each step carried a rhythm, a beat that matched his steady heart. The sky stretched above him, wide and open like a promise, waiting to be spoken. He did not know where his feet would lead, only that he trusted the road ahead, and so he walked with quiet joy, letting the day unfold like the pages of a favorite book. Down the path, he passed the willow tree, its long arms swaying like a dancer. Bees buzzed softly around wildflowers, each one golden with morning light. He bent down to watch an ant carry a crumb 10 times its size with no complaint. A breeze moved through the tall grass, carrying the scent of pine and wet stone. Further along, he found a clearing where light spilled like melted gold. He sat there cross-legged, listening to the earth's breath and the sky's silence. A squirrel darted nearby, stopping only to inspect him with curious eyes. The sound of a distant bell reached him soft and slow, like a wave from far away. He could feel the village waking behind him and the world stretching its limbs. There was no need for conversation, only the quiet companionship of being present. He closed his eyes and felt the heartbeat of the land under his fingertips. Somewhere, a brook laughed over rocks, telling stories to whoever would listen. Birds passed overhead in a quiet flight, casting soft shadows on the grass below. Time drifted like a feather through the clearing, neither rushing nor waiting. And Leo smiled, not because something happened, but because nothing needed to. Later, Leo found himself walking along the edge of the woods, where memories lived. He passed the old gate, half open, as if inviting him back into forgotten moments. The trees here grew taller, as if they remembered every secret ever whispered. Sunlight filtered through the leaves and patches like little spotlights of wonder. He reached a stump he knew from childhood, where he had once watched clouds for hours. There was moss now where his name had once been, carved gently into the bark. He touched it, feeling the rough wood like an old friend's hand after many years. Birdsong echoed all around, and he listened as if it were a story, just for him. He followed a trail of mushrooms that seemed to form a quiet path of their own. His fingers brushed ferns that curled and unfurled like sleepy dancers in the morning. Each sound was soft, each scent familiar like the comfort of a blanket on a cold night. He walked until he reached a small pond, still and round like a mirror of the sky. Dragonflies zipped across the surface, leaving ripples like brushstrokes of silver. He sat beside it and whispered a memory into the water, watching it disappear. Not everything had to be held. Some things were beautiful because they could drift away. The afternoon sun hung low, painting everything with the color of old photographs. Leo walked back through fields, humming a song that had no words, just feeling. He waved at the baker's daughter who was picking berries with stained fingers. Her laughter rang out clear and bright, like a bell at the end of a long day. By the fountain, he saw children floating paper boats, cheering as they raced. The breeze carried smells of cinnamon apples and something baking in the distance. A man played a flute near the fountain, filling the air with music soft as water. The cobblestones underfoot were warm and uneven, like a well-traveled path. Elders sat beneath an awning sharing tea and tales with smiles that knew. Time a dog barked once, then settled back down beside a cart filled with bright vegetables. Leo sat near the edge, watching all of it, like a painting that slowly moved. He closed his eyes and let the sounds wrap around him like a lullaby with no end. The village was alive, but never rushed, full of purpose, but never loud. Even the sky seemed to move slower, here turning amber like melted candlelight. And Leo felt a deep calm settle inside, like a hand resting gently on his heart. As evening arrived, the colors deepened and the world exhaled in quiet wonder. Lanterns were lit one by one, each flame flickering like a tiny dream come alive. The sound of soup being stirred and spoons clinking echoed through the windows. Leo walked home slowly, his hands tucked into his sleeves against the chill. The trees whispered above him, their leaves rustling like pages turning softly. When he reached his cottage, the door welcomed him with a familiar creak. Inside, everything glowed with the warmth of candles and the scent of time. He placed a few stones by the fireplace, each one gathered from a different walk. They held stories he would never tell, but always remember in the silence. A notebook lay open by the window, with sketches of clouds and gentle animals. He added a new line, a sentence not for others, but only for the quiet in him. Outside the moon had risen slow and round, watching like a guardian of dreams. He poured himself tea and listened to the night as if it were an old song. The cottage breathed with him, steady calm, unhurried like the beating of a kind heart, and sleep waited like an old friend just outside the edge of the flame's glow. The stars began to appear one by one, like tiny notes in a quiet, nighttime song. Leo stepped outside, wrapping himself in a soft shawl that smelled of lavender. The night air touched his face gently, like a parent brushing back a child's hair. Crickets played their tiny instruments, hidden among the tall grass and shadows. He looked up at the sky, where constellations told stories older than memory. An owl called up from the woods, its voice deep and calm, like a question waiting. Fireflies floated across the field, blinking softly, like little wishes with wings. Leo walked barefoot, letting the cool earth remind him of the world beneath dreams. Each step felt sacred, slow, deliberate, as if dancing with the silence. He followed the path behind his cottage, where wildflowers rested in the dark. Their petals closed like sleeping faces glowing faintly in the starlight. He sat on a flat stone halfway down the trail, listening to the sounds of stillness. The wind carried a distant lullaby, maybe from a mother rocking her baby to sleep. His eyes closed, and the stars above seemed to drift just a little closer to him. Night was not empty. It was full of soft things that only the heart could hear. Back inside the cottage, Leo lit one final candle, its flame steady and kind. He placed a blanket near the window, where the moon poured its silver light. A journal waited for him. They're filled with pages of sketches, dreams, and thoughts. Tonight he wrote not with answers, but with gentle questions that smiled quietly. He drew a feather, a cup of tea, a winding trail, a small bell, and a leaf. Each symbol meant something, though he could not name it with words. Sometimes stories were meant to be felt more than they were meant to be told. He paused with his pen in the air, listening to the quiet sound of breath and being. Somewhere far away, a train moved slowly through the night, humming like a lullaby. He remembered a dream he had once of flying without wings over sleepy hills, and how he had woken up smiling with no reason except the dream itself. Outside, an old fox passed through the edge of the garden, unseen but not unfelt. The candle flickered once, then settled back into its glow, as if it too was listening. Leo leaned back, watching shadows move across the wall like gentle dancers. The night was long, but never lonely, when you listened with your whole heart. A soft knock came at the door, and Leo rose without surprise or worry. When he opened it, there was no one there, only a folded note on the step. He picked it up carefully, as if it were something ancient and delicate. The paper smelled of rosewood and rain, like it had traveled far to reach him. Inside were 4 simple words, written in careful, uneven handwriting. "Come walk with me." Leo smiled and looked toward the woods where the trees swayed like a quiet yes. He wrapped himself again and stepped into the night as if into a dream. The path welcomed him, familiar and new. Like a song he had forgotten. He knew. The moon guided him its light, painting everything in silver kindness. Leaves rustled gently, falling like soft thoughts onto the ground beside him. He heard a voice, not with his ears, but somewhere deep in his chest. It called him forward. Not fast, not loud, but with steady peace. He passed the stream, where water whispered secrets to smooth stones. And he walked with trust into the unknown, carried by the silence of the stars. In the heart of the woods, where light barely touched and silence was thick, Leo found an old bench carved from fallen trees and shaped by time. He sat there waiting not for anything in particular, but because it felt right. The wind moved through the branches above, like an ancient lullaby, without words. Then from the shadows stepped an old man wrapped in a cloak of leaves and night. His eyes were kind and deep, like wells filled with memories and stories. He nodded once, as if to say, "You are where you need to be." Leo did not speak, and neither did the man, but something passed between them. A quiet understanding that stories live in silence as much as in sound. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stone. Smooth and blue, he placed it beside Leo, without explanation, and smiled with eyes full of knowing. Then he turned and walked back into the forest, his steps leaving no trail behind. Leo held the stone and felt warmth pulse from it, like a heartbeat of the earth. He looked up, and the stars shimmered above, like lanterns in a sky of velvet. He closed his eyes and let the night wrap around him like a soft, whispered goodbye. When Leo returned to his cottage, the sky had begun to change its color gently. The first hints of dawn painted the edges of the clouds with pale promises. He placed the blue stone on his windowsill where light would find it. Each morning his heart felt both full and light, like a balloon carrying invisible things. The kettle began to hum as if greeting the new day with a familiar tune. He brewed tea with mint and chamomile, letting the scent float through the air. The floor creaked softly beneath his feet, like it too was waking from a dream. He sat by the window, watching the world stretch and yawn into a new day. A bird landed on the sill, tilted its head, and flew off as if delivering a message. He sipped his tea, slowly breathing in rhythm with the rising sun outside. A neighbor's lantern flickered off its work for the night, now complete. Everything moved, gently, with no rush, like the pages of a well-loved book, turning. Leo reached for his notebook and added one final line before breakfast. Some mornings are not new. They're just continued dreams with open eyes. And he smiled, letting the warmth of tea and sunlight begin the next quiet chapter. The day moved slowly like honey dripping from a wooden spoon. Leo watered his plants, humming the tune of the morning birds. Sunlight poured into the room, wrapping the walls in a golden hush. He moved with quiet purpose, folding his blanket, sweeping the floor. The scent of fresh bread from a neighbor's window drifted in. Each task felt like a part of a gentle dance. Nothing rushed, nothing loud. He tied a ribbon around his journal, like closing the cover of a finished song outside. Children laughed in the distance, their joy ringing like tiny bells. A cat curled up on the fence, blinking slowly, as if dreaming with open eyes. Leo sat under the fig tree, sipping cool water from a clay cup. Leaves above swayed in rhythm with the soft sighs of wind. He thought of the stories he'd lived and the ones that lived inside him. Still, birds gathered on the power line, chattering like they too had tales to share. The world felt tender, as if the earth itself were exhaling in peace. And Leo smiled gently, knowing he was exactly where he was meant to be. Clouds began to gather, slow and sleepy, drifting across the blue sky. A soft rain followed, touching the ground with kindness and rhythm. Leo stood on his porch, watching the drops dance upon the earth. The smell of rain and earth rose like a memory he had never forgotten. His hands stayed warm in his pockets as the chill kissed the wind. The sound of rain on the roof calmed the thoughts that moved too fast. He walked back inside and lit a small lamp near his bookshelf. One by one, he ran his fingers along the titles like greeting old friends. He chose a book with a green cover and sat on the rug to read. But the words blurred and his eyes grew heavy, not from sleep, but comfort. He closed the book and leaned back against the wall, breathing in stillness. The rain slowed to a whisper, and the windows shone with fading light. Everything outside glistened like the world had been gently washed. Even the silence seemed cleaner, softer, more meaningful than before. He listened, not with his ears, but with his heart, as the quiet continued. As the twilight returned, the horizon wore soft shades of lavender and peach. Leo walked through the field, where tall grass brushed his fingers. Each step was a song without words, a feeling without name. He followed the edge of the stream that had always known his footsteps. Frogs sang low, gentle tunes like old lullabies told without language. Fireflies blinked in and out like the heartbeat of the evening itself. He paused by the willow tree, whose long branches reached like arms. A swing hung there, empty, moving only with the wind's whisper. He remembered a time when he sat there, feet barely touching the ground. He remembered laughter echoing through the leaves like secrets shared. He touched the swing's rope and closed his eyes, feeling its story. Not every moment needed to be held, some were meant to pass through. He turned back toward home, guided only by the soft pull of belonging. The stars began to arrive shy and scattered like guests to a quiet gathering, and the sky deepened into that familiar blanket of night. Back at the cottage, Leo lit a small fire that crackled in soft orange light. He placed a pot of cinnamon tea to warm and watched the flames flicker. Shadows danced across the walls like old stories playing in silence. He wrapped himself in his shawl and sat on the floor near the warmth. The room felt like a gentle sigh, a pause between the breath of life. His fingers traced the rim of his cup, feeling its smooth, comforting shape. The warmth seeped into his palms like a silent thank you from the day. Through the window, he saw the moon rising, wearing its silver crown. A night bird called in the distance, its voice stretching across the hills. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the sounds carry him inward. His mind drifted through memories like leaves floating down a slow stream, moments both joyful and quiet, lined up gently behind his smile. The fire cracked again, like an old friend laughing softly beside him, and the tea's scent rose higher, wrapping the room in sleepy sweetness. The world outside grew darker, but inside everything glowed with peace. Time moved without being noticed, like the tide touching the sand. Leo stood at the window, watching the stars blink like tiny promises. Each one seemed to say, "You are seen, you are loved, you are never alone." He opened the window, and the breeze carried in the voice of night. A calm stillness wrapped around his heart like a lullaby without words. He looked down at his hands, remembering all they had held and let go. He looked around his home, where every corner told a soft, quiet story. The walls knew his laughter, his questions, his silences, and his dreams. He walked to his bed and pulled the covers back slowly, as if folding a page. The pillow welcomed him like a hug, given without asking or need. He lay down with one arm behind his head, the other resting over his chest. His breaths came slow and even like waves finding the shore. Outside, the crickets played a low, steady song like a bedtime rhythm. Inside, the lamp flickered once, then dimmed like a star saying goodnight. And Leo whispered a thank you into the darkness, not to anyone, just to everything. In his sleep, he dreamed of skies with no end and trees that spoke in color. He floated above oceans that hummed with the music of old stories. He walked on clouds that were soft, like promises never broken. He met children who spoke in laughter and gave him pebbles that glowed. He saw faces he had loved and voices he had missed, and felt no sadness. Every place he stepped bloomed with light, as if his presence was welcome. He passed through gates made of wind and fields stitched with stardust. He heard no clocks, no noise, only the gentle sound of wonder. He ran without effort and flew without wings, guided by joy, alone. He followed a path made of songs, and it led to a garden of stillness. There he sat on a stone, shaped like a heart, and closed his dream eyes. And from the silence rose a single soft voice saying, simply, "You are home." He didn't answer because there was no need, only peace remained, and the dream folded around him like a blanket woven by the stars, until even the dream itself rested in the quiet. Back in the waking world, the first light of morning reached the windows. Leo stirred gently, as if rising from the ocean of a long, deep dream. He opened his eyes slowly, taking in the room bathed in gold and hush. The scent of morning flowers drifted through the cracks of the window. He stretched with the ease of someone who had let go of everything heavy. The world outside was waking with soft colors and quiet beginnings. Birds perched on branches and sang like they had waited all night to greet him. He smiled without thinking, just a soft upward curve of peace and gratitude. The bed felt warm, the room felt kind, and time felt patient. He sat up, placed his feet on the ground, and breathed in the day. A butterfly landed on the sill, its wings trembling like sunlight. He watched it with wonder, not needing to understand, just feel. Everything was still familiar, yet new, like reading a favorite line again. And as he stood, he whispered again, "Thank you," this time to the light. The day replied with a silence full of joy. He moved through the morning like water, through hands, gentle and free. He brewed tea with lemon and honey and took it outside in a wooden cup. The grass was cool under his feet, and the sky was painted in soft blues. A deer stood at the edge of the woods, watching him with calm eyes. He nodded to it, as if greeting an old neighbor, and it turned slowly and left. He sat on the bench near the garden where bees worked without worry. Each flower swayed in rhythm with the soft breath of the world. He took a sip of tea and let the flavor anchor him in this moment. No thoughts of tomorrow, no weight of yesterday, just now. The wind wrapped around him like a shawl made of kindness. He closed his eyes and listened not for words, but for peace. And it came like sunlight on closed lids, like the smell of rain on stone. He stayed there, not counting minutes. Just being like the breeze, time became something gentle, something that no longer pulled, only carried softly, like a song you never want to end. The sun climbed higher, and Leo walked once more through his home. Each room greeted him with silence that felt like love, with no need for sound. He dusted the table folded, the blanket straightened, the books on the shelf. He opened the windows wide, letting in the scent of jasmine and pine. The walls seemed to breathe with him, and he with them. He sat down and opened his notebook one last time. And this time, he wrote not words, but a single shape. A quiet spiral. He looked at it and nodded as if something deep inside had finished. The journal closed and he placed it beside the blue stone on the sill. He stood in the center of the room and took one long breath. His eyes lifted to the ceiling as if seeing something not visible but felt. Then he smiled one final time and the cottage glowed a little brighter. The world outside waited not for action, but for stillness. And he stepped into that stillness as one steps into light, not leaving, not arriving, just becoming part of the peace. That night, no candle was lit, no footsteps echoed on the floor, but the cottage remained warm, wrapped in the quiet of memory. The blue stone shimmered faintly, as if holding a secret breath. The journal stayed closed, its stories safe in their final resting place. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a lullaby once known. The stars blinked above, watching like old friends from far away. The swing by the willow still moved gently, touched only by time. No sound, no rush, just the rhythm of a life well lived. In the garden, the flowers leaned toward the moon in silent prayer. And somewhere, In the stillness, a voice said, softly, "Thank you." Not loud, not urgent, just a whisper of peace. A life lived in quiet love, a story told not for fame, but for feeling. And so the night held the cottage gently as one holds a sleeping child, and the world turned slowly, carrying the story onward, like a feather on wind, into dreams, into hearts, into the hush where all good stories rest.